This clip is brought to you by SaveWithConrad.com.
I guess the story can't be told without saying Vince asked you for a big favor, right? You've alluded to this in a few episodes before that perhaps he had this idea or vision of let's relaunch ECW. And I think you sort of hinted around, he approached a few other guys and then eventually landed talking to you. Tell us about that.
Well, Vince approached me. It was, after Judgment Day pay-per-view. And he said, listen, I want to start a new company, a new promotion, and I want you to be the name and face of it. And I said, what is it? And he said, ECW. And I said, well, that's cool, Vince, but what's in it for me? And he said, well, actually, you're going to work in smaller arenas and make less money, but I'll take care of you on the back end. And I basically said, I told you this before, Conrad. I said, why would I want to do that?
Right.
Work in smaller arenas and make less money. Doesn't make. But Vince McMahon promised what he said, and he backed up his promise. He did take care of me financially.
You sort of hinted around that maybe you weren't his first pick. Do you know who else he asked about maybe going to ECW?
I don't know. I believe that he picked me because the ECW in the 90s had their top shooter in their company that was a name and face of the company, and that was Taz. And Vince saw me as a top shooter in the company in 2006.
Right.
And I know he couldn't do the things quite as risky and extreme as they did in the 90s. So Vince at least wanted to do something that was identical to the company back then. I think he was trying to make it as identical as he could up to a certain degree.
Well, and you're certainly going to be the type of performer that audience eats up. And I know some of our listeners would think, well, Kurt wasn't necessarily hardcore, but that's also a place where, Rey Mysterio got some of his first big exposure here in America. And same with Chris Jericho and Eddie Guerrero and Dean Malenko. So I get why he would be interested in you from that standpoint. He's trying not to position it as a demotion, and he's saying he's going to take care of you on the back end. But once you've been in the glitz and glamour of being the headline act, the last match, the main event at a WrestleMania, even if the money was right, did it still kind of feel like a demotion to be working with a smaller brand and smaller arenas in theory?
Well, it did at first, but Vince was so excited about the product. He really wanted to make this thing successful. So the more he explained to me, and the more he talked to me, the more it made sense. It wasn't a demotion. It was just basically, me being taken from SmackDown and put over to ECW. And I think that he did it to help sell the product to a network.
When you're having these conversations with Vince, does Paul Heyman ever approach you and sort of say, here's what I see for you, Kurt? We've heard behind the scenes that Paul can be almost like a cult figure. He's our David Koresh, we're going to drink the Kool-Aid, so to speak, whatever sort of motivational speaker you want to use, maybe of a dark side. Did he come to you and say, here's what I've got in mind at all? Or is it strictly you and Vince?
It was just strictly me and Vince at the beginning, and Paul Heyman chimed in later on, a couple of weeks later. But Paul never explained to me the plans he had for me. I think he wanted Vince to, run the thing overall. Paul would run the company, but Vince would make the final decision. So I don't think Paul wanted to tell me what was going on. I think he was explaining to Vince what he wanted to do with me.
Do you think that maybe you're the guy to be chosen because A, you can have a match with anybody, B, the hardcore fans know that you are a wrestling machine, and C, if you weren't a fan of the original ECW, you're a big enough name and a main event talent that even a hardcore WWE fan might say, I want to give this a shot. Do you think that's why he picked you?
I think all the above. That's definitely the reasons why he picked me, without a doubt. You're right, Conrad.
I feel strongly that saving money is important. If it's not something we worry about now, boy, we are really going to worry about it later. And I want to help you get out of debt faster and do it with cheaper monthly payments. I'm talking to you if you're in a 30-year loan. Now is the time to take years off of your loan. We're routinely helping our listeners cut 5, 10, even 15 years off their loan. And you can do this without perfect credit, with no money out of pocket. You've just got to start at SaveWithConrad.com. Let's do Matthew Spanks. He says, we know you didn't want to go to ECW, and you said you would do whatever Vince wanted you to do. What led you to that? Just having ultimate trust in Vince. A lot of guys sort of put their foot down and say, that doesn't work for me, brother. But that doesn't seem like that was really even in your vocabulary. But it's happening at a time where you're really breaking down. You're frustrated with Vince. You're sending rude or angry or upset text messages, whatever, descriptor you want to use. But then when he asks you, hey, will you do it? You just agree. Is this just because you're so all over the place and you're behaving erratically, or is it one thing to have that conversation with Vince on the phone, but then in person, man, he just charms the pants off of you?
Well, Vince was a father figure to me, so I would do whatever he asked me to do it. I had full trust in him. It's just at the time, I wasn't able to get a hold of him because of my erratic behavior. And I think Vince was dodging me on purpose to teach me a lesson. You know what? I was mad when he asked me. He said, listen, I want you to be the name and face of a new promotion. And I'm like, what's the promotion? He's like, ECW. And I was like, why? I didn't know why. And he was like, well, let me warn you too, you're going to make less money working small arenas. I said, well, I'm not going to do that, Vince. Why would I want to do that? So I was giving him attitude that day, but he persuaded me. He kept talking to me, and he kind of coerced me into agreeing with him. So Vince does have a psychology when he meets with guys, and he makes you feel good about the decision he just made for you. Vince is really good at that. He's a great talker.
Let's talk about the ECW crowd for a moment. They're some of the most, especially back in the day, the most hardcore fans around. They made, things like, boy, this is not something I ever thought I'd say on a podcast. Show your tits a chant. And they made, you fucked up a chant. They chant everything. And it's sometimes not that polite. Did you ever get some of those chants in one of your matches and think, wait a minute, what the hell's going on?
No, I didn't. For some reason, the ECW crowd loved Kurt Angle, the wrestling machine. I didn't have any problems. I guess I never fucked up or or missed the spot while I was wrestling for ECW, so I didn't get to hear those. But I heard that they're pretty rowdy. They're very passionate fans. And, I remember when I wrestled Randy, they were chanting the whole night. They were on fire. It was just, it was a different breed of a crowd. It was pretty awesome.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.